Welcome. I'm so glad you can join us on Mission Evolution, where we bring the latest knowledge from today's leading experts to support your evolutionary process. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour, we'll be exploring evolution through lifelong brain development. We've been led to believe our brains develop through childhood, peak in our 20s, and then deteriorate as we age. What if they did not have to be the case? What if we could continue to develop our brains lifelong? Could we evolve as individuals through the process rather than slowly deteriorate over time? Joining us from Denmark to explore this intriguing possibility is Marianne Bentzen. Marianne is the author of Neuroaffective Meditation, a practical guide to lifelong brain development, emotional growth, and healing trauma. She's a psychotherapist and trainer in neuroaffective development psychology. Marianne is also the author and co-author of many professional articles and books, including the Neuroaffective Picture Book. She's taught in 17 countries and presented at more than 35 international and national conferences. Her website, mariannebentzen.com. Marianne, thanks for
Thank you. I think you welcomed me, but your voice ran out. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm very excited about what we're going to be doing, which I have no idea.
Well, we'll have fun together, I'm sure of it. So you're a psychotherapist. Where did you get your education?
That's a good question. I actually started out as a psychomotor therapist, and the psychomotor training that I took was oriented towards psychotherapy. And when I was finished with it, I was about 25. And then 2-3 years later, I was invited into a group that started the first body psychotherapy training in Denmark. So I actually became a psychotherapist just before I started making psychotherapy trainings. And then I took more, helped build more trainings. So I'm afraid I've created more trainings and participated in creating many more trainings than I've taken.
So when you mentioned you started in what was that again?
Psychomotor development. So the connection between psychology and motor development, particularly when we're very, very young and when we are born. And for the first few years, the primary connector between of our personality development is the connection between the motor development and the perceptual development and our personality. And later that shifts so that our cognitive skills are more closely linked and the body is less closely linked. So there's that pattern that unfolds.
Fascinating. So I understand you teach. What's the focus of your teaching at this point?
Well, it's neuroaffective development. And the basic concept of that is to discover that what with both the motor and the cognitive parts of personality development, what we have is a kind of a Rosetta Stone of the ways that we can create moments of meeting, and also the realization through a number of different researchers that what really changes us is the sense of moments of meeting. So changes us in the sense of what makes us develop. What makes us develop is the feeling that somebody meets me and sees me and responds to me in a synchronized fashion. It's very much like music in that way. You can say that we are sung into adulthood, into healthy adulthood.
So by moments of meeting, you mean when we can really connect with other human beings?
A real sense of connection with other human beings and a sense of being on the same wavelength as other human beings, and being in flow with other human beings, that sense of having a really good connection. And later in that really good connection that you develop all the different aspects of relationship that make you also trust that person.
So that's what starts to go on hopefully, between parent and child to start out with. And then do those moments of meeting, of course, then expand?
They expand and they continue to develop until we die. So you have these moments of meeting as the way that we develop close relationships and trustworthy relationships for the rest of our lives.
What happens to our approach to moments of meeting when we have trusted and been betrayed?
Well, actually trusting and at least losing trust and then redeveloping trust is a central part of how we develop secure attachment. Where if you never feel betrayed, then there's a way that your trust perhaps has not been tested. Or I could put that differently. I could say there's something you don't learn. You don't learn that terrible things can happen and then it can become better again, and it can become good again. And
So it sounds like it actually goes towards building resilience.
it relates to resilience. Resilience is certainly to discover that. And I think that secure attachment, so a secure sense of being connected to another human being or to other human beings in the world, is certainly requires that we have resilience. It's also, if you look at it, it's what we do a lot in psychotherapy. And it's also something that's really useful in your relationship to a spiritual teacher, for instance, that you have that sense that there's trust, that trust gets broken and that you can reestablish trust. It's essential for
Marianne, I'm
your
sorry.
trust. Yeah, no, fine.
Do you think that we spend more time worrying about this sort of thing than we did in times past? In other words, in times past, it was, are the seeds going to be planted in time? Are the storms going to come and wash them away? We were just kind of hand to mouth. And now we have a little more leeway. Is that giving us an opportunity to really explore these moments of connection and evolve as a result?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, one of the researchers, Daniel Stern, who's I think originally American, really, he said that the film, when we invented the possibility of making movies of other people, that was just as important for our understanding of psychology and of the parent-child relationship as the ability to make telescopes was for exploring the sky and the universe. So it tells you something, because when did that happen? It happened in the early 70s. So we're talking a time span of 50 years where we've learned to look more in a more detailed fashion. And what happens with that is that we discover things that we just did not know. For instance, 80 years ago, 90 years ago, we didn't know that the primary way that unborn children and newly born children interact with their parents is through synchronization. We synchronize with each other. If we go back to the late 80s, the early 90s, 30 years ago, we didn't know that there was such a thing as mirror neuron capacity in the brain. We didn't know that there was this this matching that just happens, that happens all the time, that happens in any good connection. And
So
now we do.
what is the synchronization? What's that look like?
Well, what does it look like? It looks like when that, for instance, if you have two people talking together, then one person will be making some movements, they're talking, and then they'll be quiet. The other person is typically nodding along or going or kind of smiling, or they're responding in microseconds relative to the first person. And also when they start talking, which is often quite soon after that, then they'll use movements that are similar. So there's an imitative process to it. And then there's a synchronizing process, that when you do something, I respond to it, that you do something, and then I respond with an immediate feedback, as it were.
Fascinating. So that probably goes a long way towards socialization and finding your safe place in the world.
Safe place in the world, absolutely. Socialization is a slightly different kettle of fish, because you have to start doing things you don't want to do, and you have to not do things that you do want to do, kind of like puppies and kittens.
We were talking about puppies and kittens just earlier, and absolutely, it's certainly a process, and children are no different, are they?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Pretty fascinating. We're just about out of time in this segment, but how did you come from background in psychology to working with meditation?
Yeah, I guess it was sort of an accident. I'd been looking for a spiritual path that I thought might suit me for a long time, but it felt like I didn't really find what I needed or wanted, and then the trainer that I am still using 30 years later came to do some teaching in the psychotherapy training that I did, and then he invited some of us to come to a training that he was doing, and I went, and it just felt like the right place, and it's felt like the right place ever since.
And so you started then integrating what you were doing with psychotherapy and meditation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was another accident. That actually happened because I thought it might be nice for some of the people to be able to use sensation and internal experience and to explore some of these internal spaces that fit with the maturational level. And then I realized that a number of the people that I had in the trainings, in the workshops, they were actually already meditators. So I started doing a morning meditation where we could go into more kind of spiritual aspects of the meditative process. And then they started asking me to do trainings instead of just doing, 25 minutes each morning.
Talk about happy accidents. Well,
Yeah.
it is that time. Marianne and I will return shortly, so please don't go away. This is Mission Evolution. For more information or to access past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. Hello again. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. With us this hour discussing meditation and brain development is Marianne Bentzen. Her website, mariannebentzen.com. Marianne, we just started talking about how you got into meditation and started pulling it together with psychotherapy. What is neuroaffective meditation?
It's a weird mix of neuroaffective personality development and meditative process.
Personality development and meditative process. Mm-hmm. How do those two go together?
Well, when I started meditating, I started to realize that a lot of what happened in people, including me, when we meditated, was a kind of acceleration of something that happens with aging. There's this old saying, which is that wisdom comes with age, but sometimes age comes alone. What happened was this sense of expanding and getting more, a softer sense of things that go wrong, and a deeper sense of the beauty in the world, and a deeper sense of caring without having to work to care. You know how it is, you can work to care when you don't really care, but then there's also the caring that comes by itself. And that seems to be related somehow to love. And all of those things, caring and loving, and also developing a little bit more space between yourself and both, I guess, the difficulties and also some of the pleasures in life, that doing that all seems to come more with age than with youth. So it seemed to be an accelerated maturation process. And that's it.
As we mature, do we start to learn how to stay more in the front brain, where we have logic and compassion and spirituality, than being popped into the back brain every time we see a little angst come up in our world? Is that part of the maturation process? And does meditation help you do that?
I don't think that that's what happens in maturation, and I also don't think that meditation helps. I think that what happens in maturation processes is that you get a much better connection between the primitive parts of yourself, which is where, in a way, all the all the knowing of the world is in the wordless parts of us. So if we look at the deepest parts of us, the neuroaffective, in the neuroaffective model, you look at the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is wordless and will be until we die. The limbic system, which is emotional, the autonomic is sensory, the limbic is emotional. The emotional system is also wordless until we die. And then we come to the cortex, and that's where we start to get words. But particularly the parts of us that are very verbal are also very distant from our immediate experience. So what we want is a really good connection between the part of us that has words and the parts of us that feel and sense and experience life. And that's what meditation, I think, does, because it keeps working those lines of communication all the time. So maturation and meditation seem to go together on that.
So it's an integrative process.
That's right.
Pretty interesting. So we often think of meditation as a sedentary thing. You sit down and contemplate your navel or whatever. But I understand you incorporate movement at some point. Why is that, and how do you incorporate it?
One thing I think that incorporating it actually came out of at least Zen Buddhism, but I think that there is walking meditation also in different forms of Christian Christian practices, and also in Islam there are different forms of movement practices that are holy. You might call them sacred dancing, for instance. But for me, I believe that the movement aspect is important because we spend a lot of time moving. And in some ways, part of the game of meditation, you could say, is that you start out sort of sitting on a couch or in a chair or on a cushion, and you're because it takes some concentration in the beginning to get a sense of what you're doing. And as you get better at it, then you start to do it when you're walking or painting or lying in your bed, falling asleep or waking up or standing in line by the bus or whenever.
So as you practice meditation, then you can incorporate it into your daily life very organically, it sounds like.
Yeah, you can. It's still important. It's kind of like if to jump and use a different metaphor. If I was playing an instrument, I might go and just jam with some other musicians or by myself somewhere, just playing and experimenting. But I might still need to spend time working with the scales and the precision. And in meditation, I would do that on the cushion.
So if you're really wanting to focus on something in particular, then you do a still meditation. Is that what you're alluding to?
Usually, yes, I would usually sit still, but I could also do it walking in the forest.
Walking in the forest sounds real good to me.
It does to most people.
So you speak of, would you please speak to meditation as it relates to prayer?
I think that meditation and prayer are really, really closely linked. And I think it's important to realize that it's important to realize that there's a devotional aspect to meditation, and also that there's a witnessing aspect to prayer. So I think that those two things just go together. So it's.
What do you mean, Marianne, when you say a witnessing aspect to prayer?
Well, it depends on what you're praying for. There are many different levels of prayer, but if you start off with first, you're usually praying for something that you want. So it's or something that you don't want. You don't want to have some illness or have somebody that you really care about have an illness that seems dangerous to you, or you want a better job or something. You pray for that. There's no witnessing in that as such, because there's your desire. But you can also pray for something else. You can pray for the betterment of the world, or you can pray for a prayer of gratitude, just a prayer of beauty, of thanking Spirit, God, for the beauty that's in the world and the amazing fact that little sprouts are coming out of the ground, even here in dark Denmark. here in January. So, you can pray for different things. With that prayer, there's a little bit more distance again. That's the witnessing aspect. I'm not kind of engaged in having those little sprouts come out of the ground. I'm just watching for them and appreciating them as they show up.
So it sounds to me like what you're describing here is one form of prayer has agenda, and another form of prayer is more of a being present and appreciating. Is that the differentiation you're making?
You could put it like that, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So would you write about brain development from birth to death, and you alluded to it a little bit. What are some common misconceptions about how the brain ages?
Well, most people think that the brain is done developing when we're about 23, and then it stops developing and it starts to break down. And when we're about 55, there is very little that the brain can do anymore, and end of story. Then we sort of hang out like these decrepit critters until we die. And that doesn't seem to be how it's going. So, for one thing, it seems to be that the brain, the prefrontal function in the brain, the part of the brain that's very logical and that likes recipes, that likes to do things in sequential fashions, that part of the brain matures somewhere between 25 and 27. Other parts of the brain have already started to stop working particularly well when we're 12 or 13, such as learning languages, which is something that's really pretty open until we're 12 or 13, and then it shuts down. Not completely, we can still learn languages, but it just takes a lot more work. So at 27, this function is really fast, this logical function. And then the logical function starts to deteriorate a little bit, but then another function, which is more holistic, which looks at the world not as this step, that step, this step, that step, this step, but looks instead at what is this image? What's happening here? How can I see this? What is it? What is its nature? That kind of perception starts to open up and starts to get a lot more active as we are 40 and 50 and 60 and 70.
How can we, and we're about out of time in this segment again, but how can we encourage that?
Well, one of the things we can do is to meditate, which helps that. But something that we can also do is just exercise. Exercise is important because the brain seems to be largely built for exercising. So exercise is really important to keep our brain function as stable and as healthy as possible.
So you mean like mental exercise, not physical?
I mean physical exercise.
Oh, okay.
Go for a walk.
So keep moving.
Keep moving. Yeah.
Keep moving. Okay, well, on the other side of a commercial break, I'd like to get into more how this physical exercise actually impacts the brain and can help us continue to develop versus deteriorate. However, Marianne and I will return to our discussion shortly. You stay right there. This is Mission Evolution. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. Welcome back. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. Our guest this hour is Marianne Bentzen. We're speaking about evolution through brain development. Her website, mariannebentzen.com. Marianne, we were getting into how physical exercise helps to continue to develop the brain and keep it lively into our latter years. Would you continue with that thought?
Well, it's basically the research that's been coming out more and more strongly in the last 20 years or so, that if you want to keep your brain healthy as well as your body healthy, exercise is essential. And some people say that strength training is essential, which is partly because we lose a lot of muscle mass as we age, but also just aerobic exercise. And again, as you age, just going for a walk in the forest will bring you up to aerobic exercise. So.
Yes, the older we get, the less it takes, right?
That's right. You can be lazy when you're older. It's wonderful.
So how does that work? Does the circulation, medically, how does the physical movement help the brain?
I don't actually know too much about that. It's not where my primary interest has been. I've been more interested in the way that movement generates something. Movement generates a certain form of sympathetic activity because you're doing something. You're walking, for instance, and then you can catch or you drop into a sense of flow where it feels as if the walking is happening by itself. You warm up, and then the walking starts to happen by itself, and there's a pleasure in that, and that pleasure also carries with it a form of quietness, and that quietness is also that it's very close to a meditative state. So that mixture of activity and quietness is part of what develops the or creates the sense of pleasure in walking in the forest that can lead to that most people have this sense of opening into a sense of oneness with this forest. So that's what I've been exploring. I've only been keeping slightly up with the part about what exactly is it that creates the improved brain function. But I know that some of it has to do simply with aeration. So you're right that the expanding blood vessels and the increased circulation would be a good part of that.
So the meditative state that you can go into with motion and calm, it really kind of takes you into a different place, doesn't it?
It does take you into a different place, and that's one of the interesting things about it is, and one of the reasons that I got interested in meditation originally was that mixture of sympathetic and parasympathetic is what gives us a deeper sense of concentration, and that deeper sense of concentration is also wider and has more of that holistic quality, that sense of being able to grasp a situation just by looking at it instead of kind of having to go through step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is that when you get into a certain level of meditative experience, you start to have fairly high levels of both sympathetic activation, which is energizing, and also calm, which is parasympathetic. So you have this energizing and calmness rising at the same time and balancing each other. And that's very similar to the experience of a trauma, of traumatic states. So one of the things that can happen with meditation is that you suddenly find that you've dropped into one of your old traumas, and you have to work with it. And I don't know if I'm taking you completely off track right now, but
No, not at all. That's a very important thought, because if we don't process our traumas, doesn't that stunt our ability to develop resilience?
yeah, it will do that. It's it's like having these pain points that explode without warning in different parts of our system. So that's a very important thing to do, and it's also something that meditative process can help with, but not do for us. You have to do some work with it more in a more specific way. You have to work with the sensation aspect of it to really get it grounded, and that will help you find a sense of the timing of it, and also put together the pieces that get lost. Peter Levine, who's a dear friend of mine, once said something really beautiful about it. He said, it's like you have this fragmented experience of trauma, and then you find a little island, and then you work with that little island of stability, and then a little while later you find another little island, and then you connect those two islands, and then you keep working with that, and pretty soon you have a large piece of ground to stand on. And that's pretty much what it is. And it's a process where the meditative dynamic can be helpful, particularly if you work with emotion and sensation as well as the more cognitive aspects.
So, would you speak a little bit about this meditative state and the unifying state that we can get into when we're using motion and meditation as it relates to creativity?
What do you mean by creativity?
Well, from my personal experience, I find that if I do a lot of writing, authoring, composing, and if I get stuck, I just set it aside and go for a walk. And on the walk, the next piece will come to me where I could sit and struggle with it for hours and not have it come. And so that creative writing piece will much more easily come to me when I'm out walking in a meditative state than if I'm sitting puzzling over it in front of the computer.
Yeah. That's one of the distractions that we have in meditation, is that all kinds of solutions come all. So that's what happens. You, in a way, it relates to that balancing, I think, of neurological states, that you find yourself letting go, releasing, and then this part of you that can grasp wholeness just grasps whatever it was that was bothering you. So that's the dynamic. That's one of the dynamics. So it can be helpful, and it's also obviously disturbing if what you're trying to do is meditate, and first this solution pops up, and then that solution pops up, and then there's this idea which is fantastic, and then there's one more idea. And so one of my friends, he has a notepad next to him when he's meditating, because then he can write it down and let go of it.
There's a certain amount of wisdom to that. I've experienced that phenomenon myself.
Yeah.
So it sounds like when you're going into this meditative kind of state that involves motion, you're actually freeing up a lot more of your resources, regardless of what you're working on.
Usually, yes. That's one of the things that happens. I think another thing that happens, you open up resources, and one of the resources that opens is your sense of freshness and beauty. As we age, again, to sort of return to some of the things you were asking about earlier, as we age, there's a tendency to kind of see things as if we've seen them so many times before, because we have seen them so many times before. But as we do that, we also lose the freshness that we have never seen it before right now. And that's part of a really important part of what meditation gives us back. This discovery that there's something new, that there's a wonder in the world. In that way, it keeps us fresh. And that's why it can also function as a way to remind us of the sense of what it is to be a child, how it is to be a child.
That sounds like you're speaking about it helps you stay in the moment so that you're not coloring it by your past experience or your future wishes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. So once we've started, gosh forbid, the mental decline, is there a way to turn it around?
Movement.
Back to movement.
Exercise, and also meditation is also helpful with that, but exercise is more helpful, largely probably because we've been moving for longer than we've been exercising, and then we've been meditating for.
So it's easier to move than it is to meditate because movement is something that's natural. Is that what you're alluding to?
I think that many things are natural. For instance, I don't think that, talking is probably fairly complex, but we still do that for a long time. I think that it's a question of our brains were sort of built around movement, and some researchers think that is the primary reason that we have a brain. So, we've been moving since we were fish, which is a very long time ago. And the brain is really organized to move. So a lot of things have had time to be aligned so that movement is really, really helpful to keep us healthy for as long as possible.
Well, it's fascinating. If you look at an infant, I always like looking at infants because they have a lot of wisdom in there going on. Yeah. What's the first thing they do is they start squirming and wiggling and kicking their legs, and they're never still if they're awake, really, for the most part. Is that where the movement really starts setting in, and then we have that to draw on for the rest of our lives?
We actually start moving in utero. So you get well, we know that because around 3 months we get these first sympathetic flutters from the embryo. But we're moving all the time. We have a series of reflexes that are all in place, and we've been just moving since, I know, the fourth or fifth week of intrauterine experience. So,
Well, it is time for another break. Marianne and I will be back shortly to continue our discussion, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution. For more information or to peruse past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. Welcome back. This is Mission Evolution, bringing together gifted people of service to the world. This hour, we're sharing thoughts with Marianne Bentzen. Her website, mariannebentzen.com. Marianne, let's talk about IQ. There's a lot of different schools of thought on intelligence quota and how to measure it and all that fun stuff. But when I was in school, it's like they said, well, this is your IQ. This is what you have to work with, for better or for worse. Have you experienced and have you learned while you're doing the meditation and the new approach that you're taking, can you shift your IQ by doing these exercises?
I actually don't know that because I don't know anybody who's taken an IQ test before and then an IQ test after 10 years of meditation. So I don't have any data on that. I'm sorry.
No problem. It sounds like at very least frees up what you do have to use.
Yeah,
yes.
I would say it really does do that. And the maturation process also, I think, tends to increase the way that we can work with the IQ that we have.
It's amazing, isn't it? And if we isolate ourselves and keep ourselves in cotton, so to speak, and don't have those traumatic experiences, we actually limit our ability to access our resources, don't we?
We really do. And one of the things about IQ is that there are a lot of different aspects to it. One of the statements about IQ measurements is that what you measure is basically what you get out of it. You have certain things that you measure, and that's what you get out of it. For instance, there's usually a lot of number tests in an IQ test, and so people that don't do well with numbers get a lower IQ. But what does it actually say? It tells you something about how good you are at the test, really. And tests and real life have been shown to not have a whole lot to do with each other. So.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because you can watch people that, they've been very scholastic, they're good with numbers, their IQ register's high, and yet common sense zero, not a zip, as standing next to a person that maybe their IQ seems fairly average, but they're much more functional in the world. Yeah, pretty amazing. I think we have to be careful where we put our value system when it comes to IQ tests and whatnot. So how this is, you alluded to this a little bit earlier. I'd like you to go into it a little deeper, and that's how you incorporate our relationship to the planet to meditation.
Yeah, I think that when I mean, part of it comes out of both the sense that you also recognized, Gwilda. You go for a walk in the forest and something happens. You feel connected in a different way to the forest. The forest is part of the world. We are also part of the world, but somehow we've created a story in our societies where we are different than the world is. So our sense of being in the world is that we have done something, either we own it or we have done something terrible to it, and we feel as if in a way we are not part of it. We just live in it. And I don't think that's good for us, and I don't think it's very good for the world either. So there's a whole sense of belonging, of being part of the world, of being cared for by the world, that you can discover when you're meditating. And that in this caring, being cared for by the world, which we live inside, we can also discover that we care for the world, so that you can open this sense of loving the world. And right now, I think that's essential. I think it's essential partly because people are starting to deal with the climate crisis from a sense of guilt. And my understanding of guilt is that it won't last. I mean, for how long can you kind of go around saying we're so terrible, we have to do this? It's something that our organism will not sustain that quality for very long, but our organisms are actually created to sustain love for a very long time. So if you can feel that there's a sense of a quality that feels like love that comes from the world to us, and a quality of love that we can have for the world, then you have a much stronger desire to caretake it. You have a stronger desire to help it. You have a stronger desire to appreciate the way that it helps and feeds us. So.
It sounds like it's the natural result of that kind of unity, that kind of communion, is to care and to take care of, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. I think you're right.
So you describe prepersonal and transpersonal awareness. What is that?
Well, we develop a personality. When we're born, we don't have one. And there's a sense of, probably a sense of oneness. And then at some point in time, somewhere between the age of 2 and 3 or 4, usually, we start to get a sense of a personality. And this personality starts to make a story about itself. And this story is usually has reached some sort of level of sophistication when we're about 14 or 15. So that's a personal aspect. And most people live inside that story and inside that personality shape with the changes that life gives us until they die. And one of the things that meditation can do, and that actually a lot of different things can do, including walking in the forest, is that you can sort of drop out of that for a little bit. You drop out of a sense of being me and what I'm supposed to have for dinner and how are the clothes in the washing machine doing and stuff like that. You drop out of that whole level into a sense of not perhaps thinking very much, but being in that sense of unity with the forest, or a sense of unity with your meditative process. And that can get larger and larger, that quality of unity. And that's the transpersonal aspect. So you sort of drop out of that personality aspect. Now, the personality aspect remains important. So it's not that we're supposed to stop having it, just as we still also have pre-personal aspects. We still have parts of us that just, if I ask you to notice your right big toe, for instance, you'll be able to do that right away. There are no words to it. I had words, but you didn't have any words to do it. If I ask you to then sense your left thumb, you can also do that. So there's a part of us that is capable of sensing without words, or feeling, having emotions without words. And then there's this verbal space where we have all our memories and our storylines. And then there's a transpersonal level where we sort of go beyond both of those, but it also incorporates both of those qualities, so that there's a sense of unity with a forest, or a sense of being a part of the sunset by the ocean, or that kind of experience.
Marianne, what is your mission?
I think that my mission has a lot to do with that quality of care for the world, and also care for ourselves. I think that there's a connection of dissociation that is really, really important to me. The reconnection being to get us out of being fragmented, out of being lonely, out of being, in a way, desperate, because that's what we are when we are alone, when we're lonely. Not alone, but lonely. And I think that that kind of connection and the sense of joy and care that's in that is part of what can help us create a better world.
Beautifully stated. So I understand today's kind of special for you. It's the release date on your latest book, Neuroaffective Meditation. Where can people find it?
Well, Inner Traditions Sacred Planet has published it, and you should be able to get it or order it at any bookstore. Barnes and Nobles does have it. Amazon does have it. Amazon in here in Europe has it too, and also it's been out on Kindle actually since Christmas. So I discovered that because people started writing me and congratulating me about it.
So you have two release dates. One is unknown, sometime in December, and one is today.
That's right. That's right.
Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. So again, we are just about out of time. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing this amazing process with us, whereby we can blend meditation and mental process to best serve everyone. So real quick question. How can we use this to evolve?
I believe that evolution and also maturation have to do with developing more love. Just as connection, deep connection, seems to develop more love.
Love is the answer, isn't it? Unfortunately, Marianne, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Our guest this hour has been Marianne Bentzen, psychotherapist and the author of Neuroaffective Meditation, a practical guide to lifelong brain development, emotional growth, healing trauma, which can be found hot off the press on all sorts of places, including Amazon. Her website, mariannebentzen.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to access past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. Please join us next time as this mission continues, bringing information, resources, and support to our rapidly evolving world.